the private members' bills historically have had a hard go, no matter who it comes from. It's usually from the minorities.
There's not a strong argument in
No, there's no one's against it. It just never gets there. So you know,
It gets reads for.
yeah, everybody agrees with it. It's just it never gets there.
But what it does do is similar to what we did, it creates a lot of awareness every year on the anniversary. The bill is close, and the election comes, and then okay, all in favor of that? Carried? Get your smoke detectors now, the price of what?
CO, not two, but CO.
CO.
Carbon monoxide.
I made the mistake in one of the
Chemistry.
discussions I was at, I called it a CO2 detector. I was corrected, and I said, well, maybe that means we want one on each floor.
Two of them. You've been waiting all day to say that one, haven't you?
That was. Report number 56, current application by the committee. I know, I did that. Report number 54. This is the Economic Development Task Force. Councilor Ullman.
I move the recommendation, but I am going to add an amendment to that, and that all members be voting members of the task force, and that includes the director, the chair rather, of the chamber and of the Forest BIA. I guess I'm looking back at the original mandate. I know we had some discussions about a couple.
I'll second it.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I'll speak to it, and then we'll go from there. Sorry. I guess I'm looking back at the original mandate. I know we had discussions in council about the number, and we had talked about 9, but we certainly, that's not necessarily in the mandate itself. The mandate doesn't specify a number. The mandate does indicate that everyone would be voting members. So I guess what I'd like to know, I have a couple of questions around the process, and just wondering about the criteria for making someone voting or non-voting members. So I guess I'd like to hear about that first. I do have a couple of other questions and a comment. Go ahead. No, go ahead, then you can answer that.
Councilor Underwood.
Okay, well, Councilor Scott and I we had some fantastic people that wanted to be part of this Economic Development Committee. Plus, we had 2 people who happened to be the presidents of our Chamber of Commerce in Grand Bend and the BIA Forest. And we thought, well, it would be much better if we could get the BIA and Chamber of Commerce on board with this whole thing, but as a group. So the representatives aren't Glenn Bailey or Glenn Falkenberg, they are the presidents, but if they can't make it, anybody else can go. Plus, we didn't want to come back to adjust the mandate again, like we did say 9, okay, and that's where we went from in the first place. We didn't want to exclude anybody. These are groups and that we wanted on board with us, and we wanted to give them the flexibility so that instead of having to go through this ponderous committee process of discussion on any decision that we happen to be making as we go along, they were completely free as organizations to be able to react to any sort of nugget that comes out or opportunity to just go right ahead and do it as a team. And that was the idea. And when I did speak to, I thought that I made that clear when I was talking to the presidents of the 2 organizations in question, and that was the idea. It was not in any way to cut anybody out of a decision process. There's no conspiracy. It wasn't any sort of thing to hold people back. It was a good way for us to get as many people on board with the whole thing, but unencumber people with our whole committee process.
When we looked at the resumes there, we wanted to look at getting a wide variety of different people. We wanted to make sure that we hit every avenue out there that we could think of that would contribute their opinions, their thoughts, and the reality of who they were. So if they were a farmer, if they were youth. So when we did the picking and we looked at the resumes, we knew that the Chamber and the BIA were pros already at what they do. about what improvements we've done. We know by the Grand Band book that was put out, the advances they've made from last year to this year. So the issue wasn't that the people weren't qualified. The issue was that they already, we were taking a naive approach, that they were already maybe many, many steps ahead of us. Okay? So when we looked at the resumes and we started choosing people out, we wanted to also to make sure that we had our quota representation, Bedford, if we could get Port Frank, Zipper Wash, the whole bit. We wanted to have a wide range. So what we ended up with was a volunteer fireman that's a team player, plus he was also a farmer. We had, and this gentleman was from Bedford. We had a businessman from Grand Band with a lot of contacts, and he was well known. We had another gentleman that lives, well, I thought was Grand Band, but apparently it's Bedford, that has had committee experience, and he works with the public. So then we went down, there was a gentleman from Arcona, he has a BA in admin, he works with farm equipment, lived in Arcona, he's been a business owner and been a chair. So there were lots of stuff. And then we had a gentleman from, well, originally Bedford and then Grand Bend, that was youth, that has a degree in urban development. Research paper was done on economic development of all things for Brantford. So we thought that Brantford being in the, the economic position that he was in, that this person had a lot of skills to do that. We were lucky enough to have an application from Ipperwash, where that person was actually on the Bosanquet Economic Development Committee. So she's got some past experience there. She's also an actor, so she's a real people person. So we had that skill. Another lady from Bedford, we felt was in the youth category, that she would give us a perspective on the younger population. We had another lady that is youth. She has a sociology degree, and her family background is farming. And we had another gentleman that was a senior from Arcona. So we thought that we'd taken a strong value system of every demographic we could. And then we just thought, because we were mandated by this council to put a nine-person committee together, that we would make the BIA and the chamber adjunct members, which allowed them to come to every meeting, and which allowed them to also take, and if something came out of this meeting that was hot off the press, that while we were waiting for our report to come back to council to be approved, they could take it back to their organizations and do it. So that was our thinking. There was certainly no thinking that these people weren't qualified. It was just that they could go back to their group with an item of action and do an action plan on it. We didn't want to take and put handcuffs on them and say, hey, you're going to jail until October, you can't do it. So that was the reason behind it. So that's why we did what we did.
Councilman McGuire.
Maybe I'm just a little confused here, but I thought when we set up this, the council made this mandate that the object of these individuals was to come up with a plan on how we develop an economic task force. Is that not the?
That is the final, yes it is, and this is why I didn't want to encumber the chamber or the BIA, because if we're going to say how we're going to develop, we're going to be talking about an awful lot of things. The ultimate goal of this is to come up with an economic task force and come up with recommendations that can be given to council so that we can start thinking about what the mandate and the direction we want to go for our economic development as a task force. Whereas if we have the CIB, the chamber and the BIA, they're unencumbered by this whole thing, this committee's situation that we have. Right? So that was the idea.
There's 13 applications, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
One gentleman's away and he's in Britain, so for the Olympics. So.
Councilor Elman.
So 13 applications, so 2 were discarded, or
We put
were
them
not,
aside.
were put aside. 2 were made non-voting members and the rest were made voting members. I mean, I guess I have a couple of questions just about process here, and I guess it's because, I'm an old guy, and and just the way we kind of did things, it was my understanding that this would come back to council as a report and be approved before there was going to be a whole lot of communication with individuals, and we've kind of done that a little bit backwards. I guess, Mr. Mayor, you're to be involved in this process.